Cool. All right. I'm glad you're ready because we're going to do something amazing. All right. We are going to plant the seeds of a new culture here in this room for the next 45 minutes or so, depending on how much time we can steal away from the next session. We're going to plant the seeds of a new culture intentionally. We're going to try out some things that work, that create a culture that will make things better, that'll make things great even. Not just good, not just better, not just good, but great. And, well, actually I want to start by asking you guys for a little help. I want to take a poll. If you've ever been on a team, will you stand up? Yeah, so that's pretty much everybody, yeah. If now think about the best team you've ever been on, all right? The very best team. Like Luke was saying, it could have been a work team, it could be a volunteer group, it could be a church group, it could be a sports team, any team that you've ever been on, the very best team you've ever been on. Does everybody have a team in their head? The very best team, very, very best team, most awesome team you've ever been on? Okay. Now compare that team to other teams you've been on. That very best, most awesome team you've ever been on, was it at least 2 times better than other teams you've been on? Okay, if it wasn't at least 2 times better, you can have a seat. Was it maybe 5 times better than other teams you've been on? If it wasn't at least 5 times better, you can have a seat. So a few people still standing. Was it maybe 10 times better? Okay. If it wasn't at least 10 times better, you can have a seat. Yeah, there's still a couple people standing up. Yeah. So that's what we're going for. We're going for you can sit. We're not going to keep going with that. So there are at least a couple people in the room who have had this experience that the best team they've ever been on could be 10 times better than other teams. And other people said at least 5 times better. Definitely at least twice as good. And that's what we're going for today. I'm gonna share some ideas for how to get a team into that state and keep it there and have these teams that are way better than other teams you've worked on. To be able to do this, to be able to create this culture together today in this room for the next 45 minutes or so, I'm gonna ask you to do something special as part of it. So we'll make some agreements with each other, and these are the agreements. While we're here in the room together, we're going to create a special space. The space in this room is a space of non-negativity. We're going to keep things positive. And this is a space of no negation. So, if somebody says something positive, we're not going to say something negative to counter it. And to get the best learning outcomes, I'm going to share some ideas that maybe you haven't heard before. And a really good learning strategy is to pretend that these ideas might work and just sort of listen and play along. And, after the session is over, you can do whatever you want. You can go back to being negative and negating and not learning. You might keep these going with you throughout the rest of the day. It's probably a good idea. But definitely while we're here in this space, we're creating a space of non-negativity, no negation, and pretend as a learning strategy. And if you can't do that, that's okay. There are like 4 other sessions that you could go to if you can't do this. So, and that's really important too. Everything we're doing here is like by invitation and opt-in, and if you want to pass or check out, you can. That's okay. I won't be offended. In fact, it'll be better for everybody else. So just a little bit about me. I'm Richard Kasperowski. I'm a co-founder of this group of people called the Greatness Guild. And this is what we're about. We're about sharing ideas for getting teams into that state where they're so much more awesome than other teams you might have worked on and keeping them in that state. I do most of my work as an Agile trainer and coach. I also do a lot of open space facilitation. I do things like volunteer at a coder dojo for kids. I live in Boston. We run a coder dojo there. It's really cool. It's one of those being and doing things. I love sharing with people. That's a being. One of the ways I do it is by doing stuff like this, sharing with you. I'm in the act of sharing now. This is a doing, and Coder Dojo is another one of those things. We just did some Pay What You Can classes up in San Francisco this week. It was so much fun. We did a Pay What You Can class on this stuff, building great teams. We did a Pay What You Can class on Agile engineering for non-engineers yesterday. That's where I got. I traveled from Boston with $200 and half a suitcase full of Lego. It was really fun. Yeah. So we already thought about the best team you've ever worked on. How much better was it than other teams? Maybe it was 2 or 5 or 10 times better, maybe even more. In Jeff Sutherland's latest book, Doing Twice the Work in Half the Time, is that what it's called? So he talks about, he has some studies that he mentions of individual performance and team performance. In the study of individual performance, it's a study of computer science students at Yale. And they compared the time it takes these Yale CS students to get their homework done and have it done correctly and things like that. The best students say it takes them 1 or 2 hours to get the assignment done. The worst students, it takes them 10 times longer. Right? So that's just a way to gauge individuals versus each other. The best ones are 10 times faster than the slowest ones. Okay. And then they have another study of something like 300 or 400 software teams at IBM. And they're doing similar sized projects, similar scope projects. And how long does it take them to get their stuff done and it's right? The best teams get their stuff done in, like, say, 2 weeks. The slowest teams, it takes them as much as 2,000 times longer. Right? That's really interesting. So the best teams are 2,000 times faster, 2,000 times better than the worst teams. This is some of why this is really interesting to me. The best individuals, yeah, you could hire a team of the best individuals and add them all together and they go 10 times faster. But the multiplicative effect of the best individuals, or even average individuals on the best teams are orders of magnitude better than even the collection of the best individuals. The best individuals aren't going to give you these orders of magnitude improvements that the best teams will. So building the best teams is really, really important. This chart comes from this website. I think it's pronounced Gama Sutra. It might be Gama Sutra. It's a website for game developers. It's all about goodness. Remember, keep it positive. So they're looking at, they did this survey. They gave these game companies, a lot of them were around here in the Valley and stuff, and they collected a list of things that they thought they could measure to try to see what correlates to the best software outcomes. And for them, for game developers, the best software outcomes were things like it sold a lot, they had a lot of players, they got really good reviews, they made a lot of money, things like this. They got it out the door, obviously. One of the questions was, what development methodology do you use? And they had people check off boxes like Agile or Agile and it's Scrum or Waterfall or Ad Hoc or we don't even know. That's this one. And within the margin of error, there's absolutely no difference in the outcomes they got. So what methodology you use to build your software in that study doesn't correlate to success. Right, so this is more than doing, like Luke was saying, this is more than about doing Agile. It might even be more than about being Agile. I don't know. But definitely, Agile by itself is broken. You need something else to have a great team to get these great results. And that thing that you need is culture. Right? This is old. This quote is from like the 60s or 70s or something. So this is nothing new. And Peter Drucker is like the grandfather of modern business management. I think maybe he created the field of business management. Right? And even way back in the 60s and 70s, the leaders of business management knew that it's not just about what you do, it's the culture, it's who we are, it's what we are, it's who we are together. And the thing that separates the best teams from the worst teams, this chart is also from that Gama Sutra study. They had something like 200 metrics, and they wanted to see which metrics most closely correlate to success. The one metric that correlated to success was shared vision. We know what we're doing together. We see as one, we feel as one, we think as one, we act as one. Shared vision is the one thing that correlates to success in their study. And even for people who've been on those teams that are like 5 or 10 times better than other teams, it's that sense of shared vision. It's that shared vision that gets us there. It's like if you've ever been on a team, there's like some production catastrophe, and everybody is focusing on that together. And we're working through lunch, maybe working through dinner, maybe even staying late, and getting it done and putting it into production now instead of doing all these other steps that get in the way of putting it into production now. It's that state of oneness. We are one team. We're seeing and doing as one. Like, why can't we do that all the time? Not that we should have production bugs all the time, but why can't we work like that in that state of shared vision all the time? So teams that are in that state of shared vision are at least 10 times better than teams that aren't in that state of shared vision. This is an example of a team that's in a state of shared vision. And there's notice that there's a wide range of ages in that team. That's Axel. I think in that picture he was like 1-year-old. That's Steven. He's 60-something years old. I mean, there's a very wide range of ages. We got a lot of diversity in that team, and that team is in a state of shared vision. I'm partway through this book. I'm at page 47%. Yeah. And friends have been telling me about this book, sharing these ideas with me. We want organizations that are free of all the negativity. We want organizations where people can bring their whole selves to work. There's this idea that there's, in the book, Frederick Laloux talks about things like the fiction of the work-life balance. Like, you leave your life at home when you go to work. You don't bring your whole self to work. You sort of leave your soul behind when you go to work. Teams that are in that state of shared vision, they bring their whole selves together. They bring their souls with them to work. They're really friends. There's maybe even a sense of love between them as they're working together in that state of shared vision. And one thing he talks about is that people who sort of individually make this transition from working in, say, more structured kind of command, hierarchy, boss, worker kinds of organizations, sometimes they face some challenge or they discover something new and they sort of make a transition from that sort of structure to the sort of companies that he's talking about here, which are, he calls them teal-colored organizations, and they're like on their way to amazingness. They are amazing. For me, before I read that book, I sort of put this together to explain to myself and maybe to other people why I was so interested in culture and great teams and the core protocols as a way to transform teams into being great teams. So I sort of went through this kind of personal transformation. And I can actually check in afraid that I'm sharing this with you. There's stuff on here that makes me feel really vulnerable and practically naked. But I've gone through this kind of transformation, and I want to sort of help other teams and other people get there. So one of the things the thing that we're going to do here, that we're going to practice and plant the seeds of great culture with, is this thing called the core protocols. Here's the story of the core protocols. Here's the origin story. These really nice people, Jim McCarthy and Michelle McCarthy, they worked at Microsoft around 20 years ago, up in Seattle. They worked on the compilers team. Jim took over as the head of the compilers team. Michelle worked with him there. And there was something like 150 people on the team when they got there. They took it over. And it wasn't going well. It was one of the worst teams at Microsoft. They got everybody together in a big room like this. They wanted to figure out what they were working on, what projects they were working on, which ones were going well, which ones weren't going so well. They had like maybe put a list of projects they're working on the wall. So they had 150 people put a list of projects on the wall. And guess how many projects they came up with? 150, yeah. Yeah, so they had 150 people working on 150 projects. They had no chance of succeeding on most of them. They honed it down to 1 or 2 projects. They somehow got into this state of awesomeness, this shared vision state, this state of being a great team. And they created Visual C++. At the time, that was a really big deal, right? They created the best IDE that ever existed up to that moment. And they practically put Borland out of business. Their product was so great. They just dominated everybody. They dominated the market. They put their competitors out of business or pretty close. And they were astonished. They somehow got involved with a team that went from worse than mediocre to great and amazing. And they wanted to figure out if they could do that again. Was it just an accident? Was there something they did? Was there something special about those people? Is it reproducible? Could other teams be like that? They thought about continuing working at Microsoft, like they could maybe take over another team, spend 2 years with them and see if it happens again, and then work with another team and work another 2 or 3 years and see if it happens again. And maybe they could work with 5 or 10 teams in 10 or 20 years. Instead, they left Microsoft. They started up what they call McCarthy Technologies. They create this laboratory environment. They invite teams into their lab. They give them an assignment in 5 days to get it done. And for the first few years, 5 or 10, 15 years, they just watched. They would see which teams were successful at completing the assignment and which teams were extraordinarily successful. And they would watch their behaviors, watch what they do, listen to them, talk to them, observe them. They collected a whole bunch of behaviors of successful teams, and they kind of factored them down. They refactored all the behaviors into 11 behaviors that are sort of like these success patterns, the behavior patterns of great teams that they observed. And they also did this outside the laboratory in real life at real companies. They watched what great teams at real companies were doing, collected those ideas, and factored it out, distilled it all down to these 11 principles, these 11, what they call the core protocols. They've even taught the core protocols to people, to teams. And they noticed that it's reproducible, that when teams do these behaviors, they become these successful teams. They become great together. They get into this state of shared vision. So these are, the core protocols are like 11 behavior patterns. Like if you've heard of software design patterns or architecture patterns, they're behavior patterns that you could try out. Things that we've observed that when teams do this, they succeed. They become great teams. They get into that state of shared vision. They deliver great stuff on time every time. So that's the origin story of core protocols. They're tools to reproducibly create that culture. It's about people and people's behaviors and what people are thinking and doing, the artifacts they're creating, things like that. It's about culture. And it's about intentional culture. It's not accidental. A lot of times we go to work and there's sort of this incumbent culture or this default culture. And it's a culture that is like sort of by accident. It's almost like least common denominator culture. It's whatever we can get along with, so we're not making each other too mad, and we're sort of barely getting stuff done. That's sort of like accidental culture or default culture. This stuff is intentional culture. It's like intentionally doing Scrum well. You can intentionally try these practices and make a team be really good or become a really good team together. I divide, so you've got the cheat sheet, you've got the list of 11 protocols. I also divide them into 5 categories. And I think of those 5 categories as sort of like the infrastructure for building this culture, the infrastructure for building a great team. And maybe I have it upside down. The way great teams start is freedom and autonomy. And you know that from maybe reading Dan Pink's book, Drive, that autonomy is what people need. We got protocols that help with self-awareness, because sort of like the building block of a great team is great individuals. We've got protocols for connecting together as an amazing team, and then for being super productive. And then we've got one protocol for, I call it error correction, for lack of a better term. And if anybody doesn't have a cheat sheet, you can look this stuff up in your web browser at thecoreprotocols.org, or even the really short URL is tcp.gg. TCP for the core protocols, GG for greatness guild, tcp.gg. Okay, so first, the foundation of all of this is freedom. All great cultures are based on freedom. If you look at the great cultures of the world today or in the past, even national-sized cultures, small-scale cultures, all the best cultures are based on freedom. Everybody is free to do what they want. Nobody's coerced to do anything. Nobody is controlled to do anything. Everybody is free to do what they want. And we have behavior patterns for this. We've observed, the McCarthys have observed, that the best teams have this sense of freedom, these ways of being autonomous. And actually, you could even say one part of this is even expressed in the core protocols. The core protocols are GPL licensed, so they're free for anybody to use and modify any way you want. But we've got this thing called the core commitments. It's a list of commitments that individuals make as part of a team, if they choose to. Nobody's forced to. If you want to do this together, you can do this together. The core commitments start with a commitment that goes like this: I commit to engage when present. So it's already intentionally different from other work cultures you might be involved with. Right? So, oftentimes I go with a team and they meet with each other, and instead of actually engaging with each other, they're like doing stuff like this and aiming the tops of their heads at each other and maybe writing some code, maybe shopping for shoes, doing all kinds of things that are different from engaging when present with each other, and really like wasting each other's time, not being a great team. So that's the first core commitment. The last one, you can look them up. The last one is, I will never do anything dumb on purpose, which is also different from what you might see in real work teams, where people sometimes do things that they know are kind of dumb, and they do them on purpose. The first protocol that we can use, if we agree to try these out as a team, the first one that is about freedom is called pass. And we'll be practicing that together in the room today. So pass is really easy. Anything you don't want to do, you just say, I pass. If you're doing a daily scrum or something and it's your turn, you don't want to do it, I pass. You're not coerced into doing anything that you're not comfortable with in the moment. And nobody can try to ask you why you're passing. Nobody can. This is part of how the protocol works. We're not coercing anybody. Nobody can talk about you for passing. Nobody can try to convince you not to pass on any activity. This is cool because you have the freedom and the comfort and the safety to opt out of things that you don't feel like doing right now for any reason. If you change your mind, there's sort of this corollary. You just go, I unpass, and then you say what you did yesterday and what you plan to do today, and so on. The second protocol for freedom is called checkout. Checkout is really about making sure that you're engaged when present and indicating to everybody else that you're not capable of doing that you're disengaged by not being there physically. It's kind of like if you're there physically, you're telling everybody, I'm engaged, and I'm in this with you. And if you can't do that, then you just leave, right? So, if suddenly I can't stay engaged right now, I'll just go, I check out. Maybe you don't jog, but then you leave the room. And the same safety rules apply. If you check out, nobody can talk about you for checking out. Nobody can ask you why. Nobody can try to convince you or coerce you not to check out. This is part of why it works. You have total freedom to do this. You have autonomy. You get to decide for yourself where you're going to be and what activities you're going to do. So that's kind of the basis of a great team. There are a few great teams where people are forced to be together? Yeah, I think it works. Two, 3, 1, 2. I think we have an audio guy who's going to help with that. So building on freedom. If you got the foundation of freedom on your team. Yeah. We all have the freedom to, I don't know, use whatever radio channels we want for the wireless mic. Can you just mute the audio in the room and I'll shout? Okay. All right. Then we'll move on to self-awareness and we'll make believe that, oh, remember pretend? Let's pretend that there's not a magical voice in our heads counting from 1 to 2 to 3. So we got some protocols for self-awareness because once you've got this foundation of freedom, then we can build individuals into being the best they can be. And to be the best individual you can be. We have an audio guy back. Will you either just mute all the speakers and I'll shout? Stacy, will you help with that? Somebody's counting and they've done it enough times that we know how to count to 3. Thanks, Stacy. The first protocol for self-awareness is called check-in. And we'll actually do it now. It goes like this. Just fill in the blank. You can do this on the worksheet if you want. I feel blank. Fill in the blank. Yeah. So just like look within yourself. You don't have to close your eyes or anything. If you happen to hear somebody counting, make believe you're meditating and you're counting breaths. 1, 2, 3. Oh yeah, it's working. It's working really well. Okay, fill in the blank a little bit differently. Pick one of these. I've got one. Did everybody pick one? And maybe you know why you feel that way right now in the moment? It's sort of optional. Okay. So that's the way this protocol works. And actually, you can do it with other people. So the way the check-in protocol works is you complete the sentence, you pick one of those, and we can do this together now. The way the full protocol works is you say, I feel, you pick one of those emotion words. You optionally add some more information about maybe why you feel that way, what is it that's causing you to feel that way. You can do that more than once. You might be feeling more than one of those, and so you can keep doing that. Then you say, I'm in, and whoever you're doing it with, they say, welcome. It's kind of scripted. Pretend that this is a good idea, that it's kind of scripted, and just go along with it. So now I invite you guys to try this together in groups of 3. Check in with each other. Try this out. All right? I'll put some time on the timer. Somebody was telling me how many minutes to put on the timer, so let's try it out. Oh, really?
It's coming from their house.
Yeah.
So we, even if we turn,
Yeah.
it won't matter.
It won't matter.
We also need audio for the camera. That's why.
Yeah, I was thinking you could turn the speakers off, but still get that
Same issue. They did a conference last week.
here. Oh, wow.
Same.
Okay. Thanks. All right, let's get back together. So that's just a brief taste of check-in. That's a brief taste of check-in. Some teams, some Agile teams that I work with, when they learn about check-in, they do it as part of their daily scrum because there's actually no rule against that. Some teams, when they meet together, they start their meetings with a check-in. You can check in anytime you want. It's a nice way to just be aware of how you're feeling right now in the moment. Mad, sad, glad, afraid, and maybe some other information about that, and to share it with the other people on your team. Couple other protocols here. There's ask for help. You can look at the cheat sheet for more information about that. It turns out that people who are self-aware know what they want help with. And this one called personal alignment. We'll do a little bit of personal alignment right now. Fill in the blank. What do you want? There's a list of things you might want. Oh, just, we're not there yet. Just fill in the blank. What do you want? World peace. All right, write that down. Whatever it is that you want. Anything. You can have anything, as long as you know that you want it. So what is it that you want? All right, happiness, security, successful teams. To draw better. That's great. I want that too. Okay, now the list. We'll hone that down a little bit. What would help you get that thing that you want? Pick one of these virtues that if you had all of it, like if you could somehow channel all of one of these virtues that the universe has to offer, which one would help you the most to get what you want? If you can't think of the one that you want, try self-awareness. It's actually not a joke. Yeah. So pick one of these from the list. I want blank. Fill in the blank with one of those. Like if you wanted world peace, if you wanted happiness, which one of these would get you what you want if you could channel all of it? Try to pick one. Pretend that if you picked one of them, it would get you everything else that you want. So we're doing a super fast version of personal alignment. It takes a lot longer than 2 minutes to go deep enough in your self-awareness to know what you really want. But I want blank. Fill in the blank. What's blocking you from having what you want? What would destroy that block? It's almost like a daily scrum for yourself. Pick one of those virtues from the list that you think could destroy that block, and then practice that virtue every day. That's one way that this can work. Just focus on that virtue individually by yourself. This is self-awareness. Even if you pick self-awareness as the thing that you want to work on, you could give yourself an assignment to work on your self-awareness every day, maybe 3 times. So that's something you can do as another seed of this idea of culture for intentionally great teams. This is like you do this by yourself. You figure out what it is you want, what virtue would get you there. You can practice it. You could ask for help practicing it. We don't have enough time to go through all 11 protocols. We don't have enough time to even go much farther. I want to make sure that we do a little bit of investigate And maybe you guys could investigate more throughout the rest of the day. Maybe investigate each other more. Maybe investigate other people at the conference more. So for connecting with each other, great teams, we've got freedom. We've got individuals who are self-aware, who know what they want, who can understand how they feel in the moment and can sort of share that state with each other. Turns out check-in is also a way to connect because you do it with other people. So it's a little bit of self-awareness. It's a little bit of connecting. Ask for help. I'm aware of what I want help on, and I'm also connecting with other people by asking for the help. Personal alignment, self-awareness, of course. And then we share that with other people, so it's a way of connecting with other people. Intention check is a really nice way to sort of ask what people want, what they meant when they did something. Investigate is, it goes like this. Just learn about what other people want. Learn about what's happening. Collect data about other people. Increase your knowledge and understanding of what you're observing on your team or with anybody that you might be with in the moment. Ask questions that draw information from people. Don't ask leading questions. Don't ask questions that show that you have some agenda. Don't ask questions that guide people to a particular answer. Just ask open-ended questions. Also try avoiding questions that start with the word why. Ask questions that are more like, what is it about X that causes you to think Y? The letter Y, not the word Y. We started a little late. I don't know how much time we really have left. We have until 11. Well, I encourage you to try investigating each other after the session. You can even investigate me. I'd love to share more of this stuff with you. What I usually see happen when I ask people about this, if you do those 3 protocols as sort of like seeds you can plant in your team, if you can check in, if you can have some personal alignment, and if you can investigate each other on your personal alignment, like if you picked self-awareness, if you picked courage, if you picked integrity, whatever it is that you picked, if you ask your teammates about that, if you ask a new friend about that, well, actually, it creates new friends. It creates a sense of friendship amongst people. It really quickly creates a sense of cohesion, a feeling of we are friends and we're in this together, we are a team. It is one of these bases that goes into we can have a shared vision together. We can be in that state of shared vision. We can start thinking and seeing as one with each other because we are friends. We're actually friends. We're interested in each other. We're asking each other questions and learning about each other. So that's what Investigate is about. I'll take some questions later to make sure that we can do a little bit more. We've got some protocols for productivity. Decider is a really super fast way to make unanimous decisions with each other, just come to agreement with each other. It's better than majority voting because, well, majority voting makes sure that there's a minority who are dissatisfied. Decider is way better. It's way faster. It's really efficient. Great teams do things efficiently, and they do things that they all agree on together. Resolution, a way to resolve things that you can't agree on when you're doing Decider protocol. Perfection game is a really great way to collect everybody's genius together to make sure that we're always doing the best things together. I've heard of, I shared this with a team at a startup incubator, and they started doing Perfection game as the way they do code reviews. And it made their code reviews really effective after that, because they felt safe. Nobody was attacking anybody in their code reviews. They were offering their ideas to each other in a really productive, constructive way. And the last protocol is just called protocol check. It's like, yeah, you did personal alignment, but you picked something that wasn't on the list. Is that really okay? You were doing check-in, but you didn't say mad, glad, afraid, or sad. You picked something else. That might be difficult for less empathic people to understand, so just stick to one of those 4. So that's what protocol check is. It's just a really safe way to keep us on the rails. And all of those together get teams into that state of shared vision. All of that and maybe a little more. So we do other things like web of commitment, and there's a way to articulate your shared vision together. Shared vision is actually this state of being. We are one together. And then maybe you can articulate your shared vision. We are one together, and this is what we're doing for the world. Right, so just Agile by itself isn't success. Think about this. To have a great product, you need to build a great team. So as Agile leaders, as team members, one of the things that you're building is a great team by sort of installing this culture into the team, or having the team opt into this kind of culture intentionally and do these sorts of behaviors with each other intentionally. And if you have a great team, they will almost definitely produce a great product for you. So you can think of, like the quality of the team is the quality of the product. So build a great team. And try this kind of stuff at least with your teams. Just, we are positive. We don't negate each other. Sometimes we even pretend that things work. We experiment with ideas. Like maybe you introduced Scrum to your team that way as an experiment. I've got a book here that I could share with you guys. The McCarthy's book is really good. Software for Your Head, Dynamics of Software Development, another one of their great books. I'm doing a version of this talk at the Toronto Agile Conference and in a few other places. If you know people in these places and you think they might be interested, tell them about it. And that's it. In addition to this stuff, if you want me to share this with your team, I'll do it. Like at lunchtime for an hour or an afternoon, whatever you want. I'd love to help you practice this stuff. If you want to keep in touch with me, if you want to ask me something by email or text me or call me, I welcome that and invite you to do that. I would love to connect with you guys and learn more about you and share these ideas for great teams that get great results. Share these ideas for building a great culture that gets us into a state of shared vision and keeps us there. And that's it. I think that's all we have time for. I'm going to be here for the rest of the day, and I'd love to share more of this with you. If anybody's interested, just look for me and we'll talk. Thank you.